Good morning. Namaste. Let me fix my little hat. Colorful. Colorful hat today. Skull cap. Anyway, welcome to Hayang Zendo. And today I want to address something that's been on my mind, as I always do. It's about, I call it, for lack of a better title, Who Awakens? Now, when you get to Advaita Vita and a lot of that, I understand about I accept Advaita Vita's non-dualism, but sometimes it gets people confused because there's no who. It's all an illusion, so there's no who, and blah, 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 illusory, and it has its place. But there's no denying, as I'm looking at you, that I habitate this body. And I've learned to look in the mirror and I say, oh, that's me. The reflection I get back is me. And then I embellish it and I add to it and all the things that the ego does. And I take in everything from the outside universe as far as people looking at me contributes to my idea of me. And again, certainly it's illusory. Certainly there's no me, there's only us. We're all one and the same. But let's deal with the obvious illusion. I have an illusion that I am someone. I don't know how much farther my illusions extend than seeing myself as someone. Otherwise, well, how would I be doing these videos? But anyway, who awakens? So this is not a philosophical treatise on non-dualism and that separate division is everything that's illusory and that we need to overcome. I'm talking about what it takes. What it takes to become awakened. And first of all, I want to start with a very important caveat. One does not get to choose when one awakens. When the little I becomes the big I. When the little one realizes that they're part of the big one. And what the metaphor, the image that serves me best, that is closest to expressing what I mean by individual, is imagining the ocean, and imagine the ocean splashing up against a rock, and it sends all kinds of little droplets. And each one of these droplets is one of us. In our individuated, our form with a personality, in our individuated expression of the oneness of the Mother Ocean. This drop, and this represents our lifetime until it merges back with the whole. Now let me stress, even though it's an individual drop, its makeup is exactly the same as the ocean. Didn't change. Its makeup didn't change just because it's temporarily separated from its mother, the mother ocean. So there we are, the drops. And it kind of gives you a pretty good feeling of the fleetingness of this expression of life that we experience with each individual lifetime. So first of all, this helps with dealing with fear. And again, I mention as always that the biggest fear most have is the temporariness, that they're going to die. But when you see that you came from the source, and you're flying through space for a very brief period of time, and you're returning to the source, what dies? So, who gets to awaken? Now, in my own case, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can remember, as far as I know, with my first breath into this body as an infant, with none of the faculties, with I don't know when the ego, if we're born with the ego, it doesn't really matter. I think we're born clean, and the ego develops. But as my favorite philosophy says, don't know, don't care, doesn't matter. But for the sake of discussion, but I was aware, so maybe that I was aware. First of all, I felt a great sense of loss from as long as I can remember. The loss was, something was missing. Something was missing. And this developed as I grew. And the second conscious memory I have, or thought, or observation, is that there's always somebody. I go into two directions, but there was always somebody up in the corner. Like I look up there to the corner of the ceiling. There was always somebody there communicating to me. And I remember getting confused when I finally accepted a teacher at the age of probably 62, I guess. First teacher that I accepted. I misunderstood because I always had this connection, and I thought that this was him, and I'd ask him sometimes if I had a chance. When I still ask, among the first meeting, probably the first meeting, is that you? That's not him. That's me. That's the higher self. Now the guardian angels, the guardian spirits, mine, Damo, and Roger Bacon, are closer. They're not such distance, and they're not really communicating to me in the beginning. I was aware of some presence. I call it guardian angel because I always had this deep knowing that something would protect me. Something would protect me from experiencing evil incarnate. Real evil. I've lived a life to 73 as I look at you now, where I can honestly say that real evil, I've never been exposed. I've always been insulated, protected from incarnate evil, or evil incarnated, where somebody intended physical or mental or emotional harm. Overt. Now, of course, there's more subtle kinds of abuse that we all get from even the most meaningful beings in our life, which should be our parents, supposed to be our parents. But even they do harm, inadvertent harm. So we have intentional and non-intentional. And I would argue that the consequences from intentional and non-intentional are just as far-reaching, creating just as much of an obstacle that will have to be overcome, and that's overcome through two things. Surrender, but surrender starts with forgiveness. And forgiveness starts with forgiving oneself. You've got to start there. Just as love begins from loving oneself, trust begins from trusting oneself. Awakening begins from trusting oneself. But what I want to introduce is that thirst. I talked about feeling something was missing. And longing for it from very early. I was born, I picked the right family, I'm sure, even though my father passed away before I was 4 years old. My mom had spiritual inclinations. My grandfather was a Baptist on her side. Her father was a Baptist minister, and what she took away from that is that she wanted nothing to do with Christianity. So we weren't burdened with that, at least the destructive parts, the parts of Christianity that's a social construct that wants to control power, money. Offer you that the meek shall inherit the earth. Yeah, right. That's only said by the person who has everything. Only Mark Zuckerberg said that. Or Elon Musk. Or Bill Gates. Be humble, be meek, be satisfied with your conditions, and you'll be rewarded in heaven. So your reward is later. Meanwhile, I'm taking everything you got. Becoming unbelievably rich, unbelievably powerful. I'm talking about religion, but Christian religion. I understand what I understand about Islam is the similar kind of the worst parts of Islam, just like the worst parts of Christianity. I have your money. You do what I say. You ask me for blessings. And I'll give them dependent on how you meet my rules. So there's condition. It's conditional forgiveness. Whereas personal forgiveness, when you start with yourself, is unconditional. You forgive yourself for all your trespasses while learning from them and moving on once you've learned all there is to learn in your mistakes. That's the purpose of mistakes. That's why we make mistakes. Mistakes. So let's do another take. That missed. Let's do another take. So why is there, I always talk about 1/10,000th of the population, 7.8 million people, equates to about 78,000 fully awakened beings on earth now as I speak to you. And 1/1000th of the people of the population of 7.8 billion are prepared to even listen to the 7,800 awakened beings. So 7,800 awakened beings have a potential audience of about 780 million people. So that's 100 for each enlightened person. But, I would venture to guess that 80 to 90% of fully awakened beings are just being. They're not really interested in teaching. They're just living. They're just being. And most of the teachers, although helpful as any teacher can be, most of the teachers, unfortunately, are not fully awakened. But that doesn't negate their contribution that they can make. If a teacher resonates with you, if you find a teacher or the teacher finds you and it resonates with you, and you see that some kind of I hate to use the word progress, but some kind of comfort or some kind of relationship or compatibility, great. But I think the most basic litmus test for a teacher that you should ask yourself honestly is the teacher offering to help you exclusively, and that's all they want is to help you, or are they asking for something from you, be it your money, be it your labor, seva, being it your time, being it your worship, being it your respect. These are the things that are kind of red flags for me. If a teacher's asking for money, if they're charging for the seminar, if they're living large. Although my teacher lived large, I've come to understand. And I'm actually working in my mind, working on a book about why he did accumulate. Not trying to, just trying to share, to explain, to give a background. Because I've mentioned before, personality persists. Our personality, I've come to find out, come to understand, is the only thing that stays with us lifetime to lifetime, at least while we're in the process of that life. In between the lifetimes, of course, everything's available to us. But during our lifetime, we're put through a process of forgetting at birth, but somehow I retained, and I think this is the commonality among people that do wake up in this particular lifetime. We're all going to wake up. And I said before, you can't choose. I'm going to wake up. No, it's not a choice. It's not up to you. But some things can contribute. Okay? And I think the primary thing that I'm talking about today is usually those who experience spiritual awakening are driven to experience the true nature of reality. They are those for whom there is nothing more important, not even life itself. So if life is the most important thing we've got, well then where on the scale is money, possessions, greed, envy? Where are those hatred? Where are those things on the scale of importance in life? Life itself has to reign supreme, right? So this commitment is so strong that it's stronger than your commitment to life itself. It's more important to you than living. Well, that's why there's only 7,800 people awakened on the planet at this moment. Is because not many are willing to commit themselves. I saw a beautiful photograph of a guy standing on the narrow ledge on a straight up and down cliff, standing on the narrow ledge. I mean, his feet hung over the end, and I don't know how he got there. I guess he got there from above, but who knows? And anyway, this photograph is with no attachments, is of a man, and it said commitment underneath it. That's all it said. And I've spoken before about my teacher leading me to the precipice. This vision that I had on this sheer cliff with a narrow ledge where he just, I don't know, floated away, went back up, I don't know. In this image that I'm creating now, but in my experience, he turned his back. He just looked and said, jump. And then he turned his back on me and walked away. And I knew as I watched him leave, I was full of respect, full of awe, full of appreciation, full of love. But I realized that his job was done. And it didn't need any words. Just taking you to the precipice. That was his job. And there's so few of his followers or his disciples or whatever you want to call them, the people that gravitated towards him for whatever reason, or her, got to the point where they were even ready to be offered the opportunity to jump, because we had to, number one, transcend the need for a teacher. That's when you run out of questions. That's the beginning of that. Knowing, the next step is knowing that only you are responsible. Only you can, he can't help you become enlightened. Not at all. He can guide you on your advice, you on your spiritual journey, but it's all of your doing. So very few, any teacher is lucky that they get one or two people that they can abandon, so to speak. My teacher turned his back and walked away with never a look back. He wasn't vested in whether I jumped or not, whether or not I took the plunge into nothingness, to the abyss. He wasn't involved. He did his job. He got me. This is his ultimate accomplishment as a teacher, to get you to the point where you prepare yourself, and all he has to do is tell you, jump. And this is where faith comes in. But he's not interested, if you want to put it bluntly. He or she is finished. There's a lot of other people to work on, but they're done with you because there's nothing else that they can offer. Their job is done. So I would ask you, how many of you what would you do? If you got to the point in your spiritual evolution, your spiritual understanding, to even get to the abyss, to get to the point where you just jump. First of all, you had to get rid of all fears, fear of death. And the process of getting rid of fears also leads to the recognition of the illusion of the Maya, of the ego, the false ego, the little e. Even though I found out myself that the big E, the spiritual ego, after I took the plunge, after I jumped off the abyss, awakened, infant, a helpless infant, I watched the growth of my spiritual ego, and particularly in the first year after awakening. And the sheer telltale signs of a spiritual ego is when you start thinking that you've accomplished something. You've accomplished nothing. You've gone nowhere. You're now here. Let me say, you've gone nowhere, but you're now here. What did you accomplish? Nothing. All you did is realize that you're in your original state. You remember the forgotten, as I like to say. It serves me, even though I've read that nothing's to be remembered, nothing's to be forget. You know, sometimes it gets so obscure. It's hard to understand. When I was practicing in a dojo in Renzai Zen, my Roshi, my teacher, gave me a koan. And I wrestled with this koan. It was gifted to me 30 years ago minimum. And I wrestled with it for all these years to get to the point what the purpose of a koan was. It's not a solution. It's not a math problem. You don't solve it. You surrender to it. But it does have a purpose. But anyway, so if you're one of them, one of the few that will get to the point where your teacher even considers you eligible to offer you the choice, jump. And knowing full well, as he or she turns their back on you, that they're finished. That's it. You're done. You're no longer of any particular concern to them. Because they reserve, if they're good, they reserve their concern for those that haven't gotten to the stage where they can have the opportunity to even make a choice. So you face your fears. You've relegated the ego, the little e, to the realm of nonsensical, monkey mind, nonsensical, rambling, nonsensical trickster that it surely belongs. You discarded it like a snake discards its skin. You were enveloped by it, you were separated from the world by it, but you know, as you grow, your skin has to give and leave the dry skin behind as you have this nice new fresh coat. And we do the same thing in our evolution, our spiritual journey, our spiritual path. Through the auspices, through the moment to moment, step by step nature of the process. So when I was given the opportunity to jump, I did not hesitate. I jumped into the abyss, the bottomless pit. And that jump for me was the darkness of the soul. When you wake up alone and helpless. after awakening, your guides are there, but you're unaware of them or unappreciative, or so there's an oversense. At least for me, there's the mourning of the death of the ego, just as the passing of any physical body of any being. There's a period of mourning attached to recognizing what you always thought was you, as this true illusionary nature. There's a mourning. At least I experience a mourning. And I don't mean like good mourning. I mean M-O-U. To feel sorrowful and helpless. And I think the spiritual ego comes in there because as you mature, from a baby Buddha, from a helpless infant, you feel quite good about yourself. You went from a state of despair to a state of full awareness. It's a process. Buddhas need to mature. They need to grow. They need to do some more self-analyzing or self-study. But when you do make it through the first year, boy, then another big obstacle pops up, but you're not aware of it because you say, how extraordinary am I? I've become one of the 7,800 awakened beings. And I want to stop right here to say that if you have any doubt at all that you've awakened, you simply haven't. It's incontrovertible. You're without doubt for maybe the first time in most of our lives, because my first thing always has been, I doubt it. I doubt it. And what I want to end up with is this commitment on my part. I told you from birth, I already made this my prime objective, to go back to the state of oneness, to escape separation and division, to awaken fully, abidingly. But it took 63 years. And I was dedicated. I thought of little else. I wasn't concerned about money or possessions or status or accomplishments. I did what I had to survive, and that was it. But I was 100% committed to becoming a Buddha, to awakening to my common state of oneness. And then I had to appreciate just how ordinary that accomplishment is.